The letter arrived on a Tuesday, the day my world collapsed for the second time. I stood in my cramped kitchen, holding the foreclosure notice with trembling hands, wondering how my own daughter could have betrayed me so completely. Through the small window above my sink, I could see the distant silhouette of Eleanor's new mansion on the hill, its windows gleaming like mocking eyes in the afternoon sun. 6 months ago, I had signed those loan papers at her insistence. "It's just a formality, Mom," she had said, her manicured hand guiding mine. "The business is taking off, and I need a co-signer temporarily. You won't have to pay a dime." Now, at 58, I was facing homelessness while Eleanor hosted champagne parties in her 5-bedroom estate. I folded the notice carefully and placed it on the counter. My retirement fund was gone, drained to cover Eleanor's first 3 missed payments before I realized the extent of her deception. My credit score, once immaculate, was in ruins. The small home I had worked 30 years to pay off would be taken from me in 90 days. My phone rang, and Eleanor's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, as I had done for weeks. She'd call to make excuses, to promise money that never arrived, to explain why she couldn't possibly help when she had so many expenses with the new house. I couldn't bear to hear her voice today. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by the bills I couldn't pay and the memories I couldn't escape. The weight of betrayal pressed against my chest until I could hardly breathe. My hands, weathered from decades of hard work, curled around the warm mug as I considered my options. I had raised Eleanor alone after her father died when she was just 7. I had worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, to give her everything: dance lessons, private school, college without student loans. I had postponed my own dreams, my own life, putting everything into hers. And this was my reward: a foreclosure notice, and the distant view of her success built on my financial ruin. The phone rang again. Not Eleanor this time, but my sister Judith. "Have you seen the article?" she asked without preamble when I answered. "What article?" My stomach twisted. "I haven't seen it." "She doesn't mention you once, Margaret. Not a single acknowledgement of how you put her through college or co-signed those loans. She's claiming she built everything from nothing." I closed my eyes, feeling a strange calm settle over me. The pain was still there, but something else was emerging: cold, clear determination I hadn't felt in years. "Judith, I need to call you back." "What are you going to do?" "I'm not sure yet, but I'm done being a doormat." After hanging up, I went to my bedroom and opened the bottom drawer of my dresser. There, beneath faded sweaters, was a small wooden box containing the only valuable thing I still owned: my mother's diamond earrings. I had saved them for Eleanor's wedding day, a day that never came because she was too focused on her career for relationships. I slipped the earrings into my pocket and grabbed my car keys. It was time to pay a visit to Richard Thornton, my late husband's best friend and the only lawyer I knew. Richard's office was in the old part of town, a modest brick building that had seen better days. Like me, Richard had never been one for flash or pretense. He looked up from his desk when his secretary showed me in, his eyes widening in surprise. "Margaret Wilson. It's been too long." I settled into the chair across from him, suddenly uncertain. "I need advice, Richard. And possibly representation." His expression grew serious as I laid out the whole story: the loans, Eleanor's promises, the foreclosure notice, and the years of sacrifice that had preceded it all. I showed him the paperwork, my hands steady now despite the humiliation burning in my chest. When I finished, Richard removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "This is elder financial abuse, Margaret. She's my daughter. That makes it worse, not better." He leaned forward. "You have options. We can file a civil suit for fraud. We can report this to Adult Protective Services. There are ways to fight this." I shook my head. "I don't want to drag my daughter through court. I just want what's mine. I want my home, and I want her to acknowledge what she's done." Richard studied me for a long moment. "There might be another way. Less conventional, but potentially effective. He hesitated. Eleanor's success depends on her reputation, doesn't it? Her image as a self-made businesswoman? According to the Herald, yes. Then perhaps that's where we start. Not with legal action, but with truth. As Richard outlined his suggestion, I felt a mix of apprehension and vindication. It wasn't revenge, I told myself. It was justice. It was standing up for myself after a lifetime of putting others first. I left Richard's office with a plan and stopped at the Herald's building on my way home. The young reporter who had written the glowing profile of Eleanor was eager to hear additional background for a follow-up piece. I told him I was Eleanor's mother, and watched his expression change as I shared the unvarnished truth about her self-made success. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my porch swing, watching the lights in Eleanor's distant mansion, wondering if she had any idea what was coming. Part of me hoped she would call, would come to her senses, and make things right before I had to take the next step. But my phone remained silent. In the morning, I dressed carefully in the navy suit I had worn to my retirement party 5 years earlier. I fixed my silver hair in a neat bun and applied a touch of lipstick. Then I drove to Eastland Properties, the real estate development firm where Eleanor had recently been made partner. The receptionist looked up with a practiced smile as I approached. "May I help you?" "I'm here to see Eleanor Wilson. I'm her mother." Her smile faltered slightly. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I'm sure she'll want to see me." I set my handbag on the counter. "Please tell her Margaret is here." The receptionist made a quiet call, her eyes darting to me nervously. After a moment, she directed me to take the elevator to the 5th floor. Eleanor's assistant, a young man with a crisp shirt and anxious eyes, met me and led me to a conference room rather than her office. "Ms. Wilson will be with you shortly," he said, offering me water that I declined. I waited 15 minutes before the door opened. Eleanor stood there, immaculate, in a designer suit, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves around her shoulders. For a moment, I saw the little girl who had once run to me with skinned knees and broken toys, looking for comfort. Then her expression hardened, and she was a stranger again. "Mom, this isn't a good time. I have clients waiting. I received a foreclosure notice yesterday." She had the grace to flinch. "I know, I'm working on it. There's a deal closing next week that should." "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "No more promises, Eleanor. I'm not here to beg for what's rightfully mine. I'm here to tell you what happens next." She closed the door and took a seat across from me, wariness replacing her initial dismissiveness. "What does that mean?" I placed my mother's earrings on the table between us. "Do you remember these? I was saving them for your wedding day." She reached for them, but I pulled them back. "I'm selling them to hire a lawyer. Richard Thornton. You remember him? He was at your father's funeral. We can work this out. Like we've been working it out for the past 6 months? While you've been lying to me, lying to the press about being self-made, and living in that mansion built with money you stole from me? I didn't steal. You committed fraud. You never intended to pay those loans. You knew exactly what you were doing when you made me co-sign." I leaned forward. "The Herald is running a new story tomorrow. A correction to their glowing profile of you. I've given them copies of all the loan documents and bank statements." Eleanor's composure cracked. "You can't do that. My reputation." "Your reputation should reflect who you really are." I stood up, suddenly tired of the conversation. "You have 24 hours to transfer sufficient funds to pay off the loans and the missed mortgage payments. If you don't, the story runs, and I file formal charges for elder financial abuse." "You would do that to your own daughter?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "My own daughter did this to me." I picked up my handbag and the earrings. 24 hours, Eleanor. And I want a public apology for what you've done to me, and to everyone else you've deceived with your self-made story. I left her sitting there, her perfect facade crumbling. As I walked through the gleaming lobby of Eastland Properties, I felt no triumph, only a profound sadness mixed with the first stirrings of self-respect I'd felt in years. Back home, I made a pot of tea and called Judith to tell her what I had done. She was silent for a long moment after I finished. "Are you sure about this, Margaret? It could get ugly." "It's already ugly. At least now I'm standing up for myself." "What if she calls your bluff?" "It's not a bluff." I looked out my kitchen window at Eleanor's mansion. "I should have done this months ago, when she first started missing payments. I've been enabling her my whole life, and it's time to stop." That evening, as I was washing dinner dishes, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Eleanor standing on my porch, her eyes red-rimmed, her perfect hair now disheveled. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside, noticing how she surveyed my modest home with new eyes, perhaps seeing for the first time the stark contrast between her luxury and my struggle. "I've spoken to the bank," she said, perching on the edge of my sofa. "I've arranged to pay off the loans and bring your mortgage current." "And the Herald article?" She winced. I called the reporter, told him there had been a misunderstanding about my background. She couldn't quite meet my eyes. I said I'd been fortunate to have a mother who sacrificed everything for my education and early career. I sat across from her, studying the daughter I had raised and wondering where I had gone wrong. "Why, Eleanor? Why did you do this to me?" "I never meant—" She stopped, seeming to catch herself in another lie. "I was desperate. The business was failing. I needed capital, and no bank would lend to me directly. I thought I could turn things around quickly, pay everything back before you ever knew there was a problem. And when you couldn't?" She looked down at her manicured hands. "I was ashamed. And then I got the chance to buy into the partnership at Eastland. But it required a significant investment. I had to choose between paying your loans or securing my future. So, you chose yourself. As you always have. That's not fair. Isn't it?" I stood up, suddenly needing distance between us. "When have you ever put anyone else first, Eleanor? When have you ever considered the consequences of your actions on others? I'm trying to fix it now. Because you got caught. Because your reputation is at stake." I shook my head. "Not because it was the right thing to do." Eleanor rose, her composure returning. "The money will be transferred tomorrow. Your house will be safe. Isn't that what you wanted?" "What I wanted was a daughter who wouldn't have put me in this position in the first place." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. I said I'm sorry. "No, you didn't actually." We stood in silence, the gulf between us wider than ever. Finally, Eleanor moved toward the door. After she left, I sat alone in my living room, the victory hollow. The money would come, my home would be saved, but something fundamental had broken between us. Perhaps it had been broken for years, and I was only now seeing it clearly. The next morning, I received a call from my bank, confirming that funds had been deposited to cover all outstanding loans and mortgage payments. An hour later, Eleanor's assistant delivered an envelope containing a cashier's check for $20,000 for any additional hardship. The attached note read in Eleanor's handwriting. I called Richard to tell him the financial issues had been resolved, but he seemed troubled. "This solves the immediate problem, Margaret. But what about the next time? People who commit this kind of fraud rarely stop at one victim." His words stayed with me as I went about my day, trying to return to normal life. That afternoon, I received another call, this one from a woman named Sophia Reeves. "Mrs. Wilson? I hope you don't mind me contacting you. I'm one of Eleanor's former business partners. I read the correction in the Herald this morning." My heart sank. "What can I do for you, Ms. Reeves?" "I think we should meet. There are things you should know about your daughter's business practices. Things that affect more people than just you." We arranged to meet at a cafe the following day. That night, I sat on my porch swing again, looking up at Eleanor's mansion, and wondering what new revelations awaited me. The money had been returned, but Richard was right, this wasn't over. If Eleanor had defrauded others, if her entire business was built on deception, then my actions had merely scratched the surface of a much larger problem. My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "I hope you're satisfied now." I didn't respond. Instead, I went inside and pulled out a photo album I hadn't looked at in years. There was Eleanor on her 5th birthday, gap-toothed and beaming. Eleanor at her high school graduation, serious and determined. Eleanor and me after her college commencement, her arm around my shoulders as we both smiled for the camera. Where had that daughter gone? Had she ever really existed? Or had I been blind to her true nature all along? I closed the album and made a decision. Tomorrow, I would meet with Sophia Reeves. I would listen to what she had to say. And then I would decide whether my quest for justice was truly complete or whether it had only just begun. As I prepared for bed, I realized that for the first time in months, I felt strong. Not happy, not whole, but strong. I had stood up for myself, and regardless of what came next, I wouldn't go back to being a victim, not for Eleanor, not for anyone. The foreclosure notice still sat on my kitchen counter. I picked it up and tore it in half, then in quarters, letting the pieces fall into the trash. My home was safe for now, but my relationship with my daughter might be damaged beyond repair. And yet, as I turned out the lights and headed to bed, I felt a strange sense of peace. Sometimes, standing up for yourself means being willing to lose what you thought you couldn't live without. I had spent my life trying to be the perfect mother, putting Eleanor's needs above my own at every turn. Now, at 58, I was finally learning to put myself first. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new revelations. Sophia Reeves might open doors to uncomfortable truths I wasn't prepared to face. But whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms, with my dignity intact. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized that Eleanor had inadvertently given me something valuable: the strength to fight back, to reclaim my life, and to discover who Margaret Wilson really was when she wasn't defined solely as someone's mother. And that, perhaps, was worth more than any mansion on a hill. I arrived at Riverside Cafe 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table that offered privacy while allowing me to watch the door. The place was quiet, populated by a few college students with laptops and an elderly couple sharing a pastry. I ordered a black coffee and waited, my stomach tight with anticipation. Sophia Reeves entered precisely at 2 o'clock. She was younger than I expected, perhaps in her mid-30s, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and sharp, intelligent eyes that scanned the room before settling on me. She moved with purpose, extending her hand as she approached. "Mrs. Wilson, thank you for meeting me." Her grip was firm, her gaze direct. She sat across from me, declining my offer of coffee with a small shake of her head. "I should explain why I contacted you," she began, placing a leather portfolio on the table between us. "3 years ago, I invested $200,000 in your daughter's first real estate venture, money I'd inherited from my father and had been saving for my children's education. I felt a familiar heaviness settling in my chest. And she didn't repay you. Worse, she structured the investment as a loan to a shell company that declared bankruptcy 6 months later. When I tried to recover my funds, I discovered the company had no assets. Everything had been transferred to another entity she controlled." "That sounds illegal," I said quietly. "It exists in a gray area, unethical certainly, but difficult to prove as fraud without extensive litigation." Sophia opened her portfolio and slid several documents toward me. "I wasn't the only one. There were 5 of us, all women, all connected to Eleanor through various social networks. Together, we lost over $1 million. I stared at the papers, recognizing Eleanor's signature on contracts nearly identical to those I had signed. The same promises, the same reassurances written in careful legal language. "Why didn't you go to the authorities?" "We tried. The district attorney said it was a civil matter. We consulted attorneys who estimated legal fees would exceed what we might recover." Sophia's composure slipped slightly, revealing the anger beneath. "And Eleanor was very careful. She cultivated relationships with influential people, donated to the right charities, maintained the perfect image of success. Until now," I murmured, thinking of the Herald correction. "Yes. Your actions have created the first crack in her facade." Sophia leaned forward. "Mrs. Wilson, we've formed a group for victims. We meet monthly to share information and explore options. We'd like you to join us. I felt suddenly overwhelmed. This was larger than I had imagined, more calculated than a daughter taking advantage of her mother's trust. I need time to think about this. Eleanor is planning a major investment seminar next month. She's targeting retirees with significant savings. My blood ran cold. More victims. Potentially, yes. Unless someone stops her. After Sophia left, I remained at the cafe, nursing my cold coffee and trying to process what I'd learned. The Eleanor I thought I knew, selfish and entitled perhaps, but not deliberately cruel, seemed to be dissolving before my eyes, revealing someone I didn't recognize at all. My phone buzzed with a text from Judith. Checking in. How are you holding up? I didn't know how to answer. Instead, I gathered Sophia's documents, paid for my coffee, and drove to the local library where I could use a computer without leaving a digital trail. For the next 3 hours, I researched Eleanor's business ventures, following the breadcrumb trail of LLCs, property transfers, and bankruptcy filings. The pattern Sophia had described emerged clearly. Companies formed, investments solicited, assets transferred, bankruptcies filed. All legal on paper. All designed to shield Eleanor from consequences while maximizing her profits. Her response came immediately. Thank you. We meet at 7. 1450. 3 Oakwood Drive. The next morning, I received a call from Richard Thornton. Margaret, have you seen today's business section? No. Why? Eleanor has announced a partnership with Westridge Retirement Investments. They're launching a new fund targeting seniors with at least $100,000 in assets. My conversation with Sophia flashed through my mind. When? The seminar is scheduled for 3 weeks from now. Margaret, if she's using the same tactics. The days until Thursday passed in a blur of anxiety and research. I found myself watching Eleanor's mansion from my kitchen window, wondering what she was doing, whether she felt any remorse, whether she ever thought about the lives she had damaged. Once, I saw her car in the driveway, and had a wild impulse to drive up there and confront her again. Instead, I turned away from the window and continued preparing for the meeting. Thursday evening arrived with a spring thunderstorm that matched my turbulent mood. I drove carefully through the rain to the address Sophia had provided, a modest home in a middle-class neighborhood across town. 5 cars were already parked outside. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering my courage, then made a dash through the downpour to the front door. Sophia welcomed me into a living room where 4 other women waited. They ranged in age from early 30s to late 60s, a diverse group united by the common thread of Eleanor's deception. Sophia made introductions. Diane, a retired nurse, Jennifer, a small business owner, Maria, a widow, and Grace, a teacher. Each had lost significant sums to Eleanor's schemes. Thank you all for allowing me to join you, I said, taking the offered seat. I'm still trying to understand how my daughter became this person. That's the hardest part, isn't it? Said Maria, her voice gentle. Reconciling the person you thought you knew with their actions. The women shared their stories one by one. Diane had invested her entire retirement fund, $250,000, in what Eleanor had described as a guaranteed return, property development. Jennifer had taken out a second mortgage on her bakery to invest $180,000. Maria had invested her husband's life insurance payout of $300,000. Grace, the youngest, had contributed her $75,000 inheritance. All had lost everything. Like what? I asked. Internal documents showing intent. Proof that Eleanor knew these investments were fraudulent from the beginning. Sophia looked at me directly. And a compelling witness. Someone the jury would believe. The implication hung in the air. They wanted me to testify against my own daughter. I don't know if I can do that, I said honestly. We understand, Diane said, reaching over to pat my hand. No one should have to make that choice. But there are others, Grace added, her young face serious. Potential victims who still have time to be warned. I thought about the retirement seminar, about elderly couples like the one I'd seen at the cafe, about people who had worked their whole lives for the security Eleanor would strip away without remorse. What's your plan? I asked finally. We've consulted with a prosecutor who specializes in financial crimes, Sophia explained. She believes we have enough for a civil case but not quite enough for criminal charges. We need more evidence of intentional fraud. And you think I can help get that evidence? The women exchanged glances. You have access. Eleanor would never grant any of us, Jennifer said carefully. She's still your daughter. I understood then what they were asking. They wanted me to use my relationship with Eleanor to gather evidence against her, to betray her, as she had betrayed me. I need time to think about this, I said, rising from my seat. This is a lot to process. Of course. Sophia walked me to the door. Take all the time you need. But remember, that seminar is in less than 3 weeks. I drove home through the rain, my thoughts as turbulent as the weather. Could I really do what they were asking? Actively work to send my own daughter to prison? The Eleanor who had sat on my lap for stories, who had cried in my arms over schoolyard slights, who had danced with her father at her 16th birthday party just months before his death. But then I thought of Diane, who would work until she died because her retirement was gone. Of Maria, whose grief for her husband was compounded by the loss of their shared dreams. Of all the others who would fall victim to Eleanor's schemes if no one stopped her. I was so distracted that I almost missed the unfamiliar car in my driveway. As I pulled up behind it, the driver's door opened, and a man stepped out, shielding himself from the rain with a newspaper. Mrs. Wilson, he called. I'm Detective James Mercer, Financial Crimes Division. I was hoping we could talk. I invited him in, my heart pounding. Had one of the women contacted the police already? Had Eleanor discovered our meeting? Detective Mercer was in his 40s, with the weathered look of someone who had seen too much of human nature's darker side. He declined my offer of tea, and came straight to the point. We've been investigating your daughter's business practices for the past 6 months, he said, placing his badge on my coffee table. We believe she's operating a sophisticated Ponzi scheme targeting vulnerable investors. I sank onto the sofa. Why are you telling me this? Because we're hitting walls. Eleanor is careful. She maintains just enough legitimate business to provide cover for the fraudulent operations. He studied me with keen eyes. And then we saw the Herald correction. It suggested you might have information that could help our case. You want me to inform on my daughter. I want to prevent more victims. His voice softened slightly. Mrs. Wilson, I've been doing this job for 18 years. I've seen what financial predators do to people's lives. The devastation goes beyond money. It destroys health, relationships, hope. I thought of the women I just met, of the pain evident in their faces. I know. We need evidence of intent, documentation, recordings, anything that proves Eleanor knew she was defrauding investors. And if I help you get that evidence, what happens to Eleanor? If convicted on all potential charges? 10 to 15 years. The words hit me like physical blows. My daughter in prison until she was middle-aged. My grandchildren if she ever had any growing up with their mother behind bars. Can I think about it? More victims who don't know what's coming. After he left, I sat in my darkened living room, listening to the rain against the windows. The house that had almost been taken from me now felt like a prison of impossible choices. I thought of calling Judith but couldn't bear to voice the decision I faced. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called Eleanor. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice wary. Mom? We need to talk, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. Not over the phone. Can you come by tomorrow morning? A long pause. Is this about the Herald piece? Because I've already. It's not about that. Please, Eleanor. It's important. Another pause. Fine. 10 o'clock? Thank you. After hanging up, I went to my bedroom and opened the closet. On the top shelf, behind winter scarves, was a small box containing my husband's possession cheese watch, his wedding ring, the last Father's Day card Eleanor had given him. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the card, tracing Eleanor's childish handwriting. To the best daddy in the world. What had happened to that child? When had she transformed into someone capable of such calculated cruelty? I barely slept that night, tossing between nightmares where Eleanor was led away in handcuffs and others where elderly couples wept as they lost their homes. By morning, I was exhausted but resolute. I knew what I had to do. Eleanor arrived precisely at 10, dressed for business, in a tailored suit, her manner cool and professional. She accepted the coffee I offered but remained standing, as if to emphasize this was a brief visit. "What's this about, Mom?" I gestured to the dining table, where I'd laid out copies of the documents Sophia had given me. "It's about these. And about Sophia Reeves, Diane Carter, Jennifer Lowell, Maria Vasquez, and Grace Kim." Eleanor's expression didn't change, but I saw her knuckles whiten around her coffee mug. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. You defrauded these women just like you defrauded me, and now you're planning to do the same to retirees at your upcoming seminar." She set down her mug carefully. "Those investments failed. That's business. It happens." "They didn't fail, Eleanor. You designed them to fail after you'd transferred the assets to your other companies." I pushed the documents toward her. "It's all here. The shell companies, the asset transfers, the timing of the bankruptcies. This is ridiculous. I'm leaving." She turned toward the door. "Detective Mercer, from Financial Crimes, visited me last night." That stopped her. She turned slowly, her face now pale. "What?" "They've been investigating you for months. They know what you've been doing, Eleanor. They just need more evidence. And you're going to help them get it." Her voice was flat. "You're going to betray your own daughter." "Like you betrayed me?" I took a deep breath. "No, Eleanor. I'm offering you a choice." She frowned, suspicious. "What kind of choice?" "Cancel the seminar. Return the money to Sophia and the others. Use your legitimate business to make honest profits from now on." A harsh laugh escaped her. "Or what? You'll wear a wire? Testify against me?" "Yes." The single word hung between us. Eleanor stared at me, searching for weakness, for the mother who had always given in, always forgiven. She wouldn't find her. That woman was gone. "You wouldn't," she said finally, but without conviction. I met her gaze steadily. "To protect innocent people from being destroyed? To prevent you from spending the next 15 years in prison?" "Yes, Eleanor, I would." "They approached you, didn't they? Sophia and her little group." Eleanor's voice took on a mocking tone. "Told you their sad stories, made me out to be some kind of monster. They showed me evidence. Evidence that matches what I found in my own research and what Detective Mercer told me." I moved closer to her. "Eleanor, this isn't about punishment. It's about stopping you before it's too late." "Too late for what?" "Too late for redemption." She flinched as if I'd struck her. For a moment, I glimpsed vulnerability beneath her polished exterior, a flash of the daughter I remembered. Then her expression hardened again. "I need time to think. You have 24 hours. After that, I'm calling Detective Mercer." Eleanor left without another word, her posture rigid with anger, or fear, perhaps both. I watched her drive away, wondering if I'd just seen my daughter for the last time. The next day passed in excruciating slowness. I jumped at every sound, expecting Eleanor's return, or perhaps Detective Mercer coming to ask for my decision. By evening, I was a bundle of nerves, unable to eat or focus on anything. At 6:30, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Eleanor standing there, her expression unreadable. "May I come in?" I stepped aside, noticing she carried a large envelope. We sat in the living room, the silence stretching between us until she finally spoke. "I've been thinking about what you said. About redemption." She placed the envelope on the coffee table. "I've canceled the seminar. These are the confirmation emails, and the press release announcing the cancellation." I opened the envelope, scanning the documents. They appeared genuine. "And Sophia? The others?" "I can't repay everything immediately, but I've drawn up a repayment plan, with interest." She pulled more papers from the envelope. "I'm selling the mansion. It should cover about 60% of what's owed." I studied my daughter's face, looking for signs of deception. Why the change of heart? Eleanor looked down at her hands. Last night, I found Dad's old photo albums. There was a picture of us at the lake house, the summer before he died. Do you remember? He was teaching me to fish. I remember. He told me something that day. He said, Eleanor, being successful isn't about what you have. It's about who you are when no one's watching. Her voice cracked slightly. I've become someone he would be ashamed of. I wanted to believe her, desperately. But I'd been fooled before. How do I know this isn't another manipulation? You don't. You'll have to watch me prove it, day by day. She met my eyes directly. I've also spoken to Detective Mercer. I've agreed to cooperate with his investigation into others in the industry who are running similar schemes. This surprised me. You're informing on your colleagues? On people who are doing what I did, yes. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Apparently, my cooperation will be taken into consideration regarding any potential charges against me. I sat back, trying to process this apparent transformation. What changed, Eleanor? Really? She was quiet for a long moment. You did, Mom. All my life. You've given in to me, forgiven everything, made excuses for my behavior. And then suddenly, you didn't. You stood up to me, were willing to turn me in. She shook her head slowly. It made me realize what I'd become. That I'd gone so far even my own mother couldn't justify it anymore. I wanted to reach for her hand but held back. This won't be easy. There are people who won't forgive you. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to stop being the person I've become. She stood up. I should go. I have a meeting with my lawyers tomorrow to start the formal repayment process. At the door, she paused. Mom, thank you for being strong enough to do what was necessary. After she left, I called Detective Mercer to confirm her story. He verified that Eleanor had indeed come forward and was cooperating. Then I called Sophia and shared the news about the repayment plan. Her skepticism matched my own, but she agreed to meet with Eleanor and her lawyers. That night, I stood at my kitchen window, looking up at Eleanor's mansion on the hill. The lights were on, and I imagined her there, packing perhaps, or simply contemplating the changes ahead. I wondered if this was a genuine transformation, or merely a calculated response to being caught. Only time would tell. But as I turned away from the window, I realized something had shifted within me as well. For the first time in my life, I had put justice above my role as a mother. I had found strength I didn't know I possessed, and regardless of Eleanor's true motives, I knew I would never return to being the woman who could be manipulated and discarded. 3 weeks passed in a strange new reality. Eleanor had indeed listed her mansion for sale, a price to sell sign, appearing on the manicured lawn almost overnight. I watched from a distance as potential buyers came and went, wondering what story Eleanor told them about her sudden decision to downsize. The local papers ran small articles about Eleanor Wilson's surprising career shift as she stepped back from Eastland Properties to focus on family and community commitments. Sophia called weekly with updates. Eleanor had made the first repayment installments as promised, transferring funds to each woman in the group. The amounts were modest $1,000 each, but they had arrived on schedule, accompanied by formal letters of apology. Do you believe she's really changed? Sophia asked during our most recent call. I want to, I admitted, but I've been fooled before. We all have, she said quietly. That's why we're proceeding with caution. The prosecutor is holding the case open pending Eleanor's continued cooperation. After hanging up, I wandered through my small house, touching familiar objects and thinking about trust. I had raised Eleanor, to be honest, to value integrity. Where had those lessons been lost? Was this apparent reformation genuine, or simply another calculated move in a game I couldn't fully see? My doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I opened it to find Richard Thornton standing there, his expression grave. Richard? What brings you here? At my kitchen table, Richard opened his briefcase and removed a thick folder. One of my clients is on the board of First National Bank. He came across some information he thought might interest me, given our previous conversations about Eleanor. He spread several documents before me: loan applications, property transfers, bank statements. At first glance, they seemed similar to what I'd already seen of Eleanor's business dealings. I don't understand, I said. What am I looking at? Richard pointed to a signature on one of the loan documents. This is a $5 million loan taken out 3 years ago by a company called Meridian Investments. The loan officer was Thomas Blackwell. I squinted at the signature. And? Meridian Investments was one of Eleanor's shell companies, the one that received the transferred assets from her first fraudulent venture. Richard tapped another document. And Thomas Blackwell is now the CEO of Westridge Retirement Investments, the company that had partnered with Eleanor for the canceled retirement seminar. You're saying they were working together? I'm saying it goes deeper than just Eleanor. Richard laid out more documents. These show a pattern of cooperation between certain bank officers and Eleanor's companies. Loans approved with minimal documentation, unusual transfer allowances, special handling of bankruptcy proceedings. My mind raced to keep up. Are you suggesting Eleanor was part of a larger fraud operation? Not part of it, Margaret. I think she was running it. Richard's expression was somber. These transactions involve over $30 million. Eleanor's visible business, the properties, the developments there, just the tip of the iceberg. I felt suddenly cold. But she's cooperating with the investigation. She's making repayments. She's making token repayments to a handful of victims who caught on to her. Meanwhile, he pushed forward a bank statement dated just 1 week earlier. A transfer of $850,000 from an account I didn't recognize to another, with an offshore routing number. She's still moving money, I whispered. Significant amounts. And based on these patterns, I believe she's preparing to disappear. Richard gathered the documents back into his folder. The mansion sale, the public contrition, the small repayments, they're a smokescreen while she secures her real assets elsewhere. My hands trembled as I reached for my tea. Have you shown this to Detective Mercer? Not yet. I wanted to speak with you first. Richard hesitated. Margaret, if I'm right about this, Eleanor isn't just committing fraud. She's the architect of a massive criminal enterprise. The consequences would be severe. More severe than what she's already facing? Much more. We're talking decades in prison, not years. I closed my eyes, trying to process this new information. The Eleanor I thought. I knew Evan, the Eleanor I had discovered, after the foreclosure notice seemed to be dissolving, revealing someone even more calculating, more ruthless than I had imagined. What should I do? Richard covered my hand with his. That depends on what you want the outcome to be. I want the truth, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Whatever it is. After Richard left, I sat motionless at my kitchen table, staring at nothing. The afternoon light faded to evening, and still I sat, turning over possibilities in my mind. Finally, I reached for my phone and called Detective Mercer. Mrs. Wilson, he answered. I was going to call you tomorrow. Your daughter has been very cooperative. Her information has already led to 2 arrests. I need to meet with you, I said. Tonight, if possible. I have new information. There was a brief silence. How urgent is this? I believe my daughter may be planning to flee the country. 30 minutes later, I sat in Detective Mercer's unmarked car, parked 2 blocks from my house, handing over copies of the documents Richard had shown me. Mercer flipped through them with increasing interest, occasionally asking questions about dates and names. This changes things, he said finally. If these connections are verified, we're looking at a much larger case than we initially thought. What happens now? We accelerate our investigation. We'll need to subpoena bank records, interview the individuals named in these documents. He glanced at me. And we'll need to bring your daughter in for additional questioning. She'll know something's wrong. She'll run. Mercer considered this. You're probably right. We need to move carefully. He tapped the documents. These suggest she's been working closely with Thomas Blackwell for years. He's our link to the bigger picture. So you focus on him first? Exactly. If we can flip Blackwell, get him to testify against Eleanor and the others, we build a stronger case. Mercer studied me. But we'll need to keep Eleanor from discovering our interest in Blackwell until we're ready to move. I understood what he was asking. You want me to distract her, keep her believing everything is proceeding as she planned. Can you do that? Maintain normal contact without raising suspicions? Could I? Could I face my daughter, knowing what I now suspected, and pretend everything was fine? I can try. That's all I ask. Mercer handed me his card. Call me anytime, day or night, if you notice anything unusual, especially any indications she's preparing to leave town. The next morning, I did something that felt both ordinary and surreal. I called Eleanor and invited her to lunch. She sounded surprised, but agreed to meet at a small restaurant halfway between our homes. I arrived early, choosing a table near the back where we could talk privately. Eleanor walked in 10 minutes late, looking harried but put together in casual business attire. Sorry I'm late, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. The real estate agent called with questions about the mansion. Any serious offers? I asked, working to keep my voice natural. 2, actually. I'm hoping to close quickly. She studied the menu briefly before setting it aside. To be honest, I was surprised you called. I thought you might need more time before. Well, before trying to be normal again. I had prepared for this. I've been thinking about what you said, about wanting to change. I believe in second chances. Relief flickered across her face. Thank you. That means a lot. We ordered, making small talk about the weather and local news. I asked about her meetings with Sophia's group, and Eleanor described them with what seemed like genuine remorse. It's humbling, she said, facing people I've hurt, hearing directly how my actions affected their lives. She pushed her salad around her plate. Diane had to move in with her daughter. Maria can't afford her medication some months. I never thought about the real consequences. Her contrition seemed sincere, her regret palpable. For a moment, I questioned Richard's interpretation of the documents. Could Eleanor truly be reforming while simultaneously planning an elaborate escape? What about your work with Detective Mercer? I asked carefully. How is that progressing? A shadow crossed her face. It's complicated. Some of the people I'm informing on were friends, or at least colleagues. It feels like betrayal, even though I know what they're doing is wrong. Like Thomas Blackwell? I held my breath, watching for her reaction. Eleanor's fork paused halfway to her mouth. What about Tom? I saw in the business pages that he's the CEO of Westridge, the company you were partnering with for that seminar. I kept my tone casual. I assumed he might be part of the investigation. She set down her fork. Mom, how much do you actually know about the investigation? Only what you've told me. Why? Eleanor seemed to relax slightly. No reason. And yes, Tom is part of the picture. But I'd rather not discuss specifics. Detective Mercer asked me to be discreet. The conversation moved to safer topics, but I had seen it that momentary tension, the careful recalibration in her response. Eleanor was hiding something about Thomas Blackwell. After lunch, Eleanor walked me to my car. This was nice, she said. Maybe we could make it a regular thing? Sunday dinners, perhaps? The hopefulness in her voice nearly broke my heart. I'd like that. I lied. As soon as I was alone, I called Detective Mercer and reported our conversation. She definitely reacted to Blackwell's name, and she's rushing to sell the mansion. Good work, he said. We're moving on Blackwell tomorrow morning. With luck, he'll cooperate immediately. And if he doesn't? Then we'll need more from you. The next day passed in excruciating slowness. I jumped at every sound, expecting a call from Mercer, or perhaps Eleanor herself, somehow aware of my betrayal. By evening, my nerves were frayed to breaking. I was about to call Mercer when my doorbell rang. It was Judith, holding a casserole dish and looking concerned. You haven't been answering my calls, she said, pushing past me into the house. I was worried. I had forgotten our weekly check-ins, so consumed by the investigation. I'm sorry, it's been complicated. Judith set the casserole on the counter and turned to face me. Margaret, what's going on? You look terrible. The concern in her voice undid me. I sank into a kitchen chair and told her everything the documents Richard had shown me. My meeting with Detective Mercer, the lunch with Eleanor. My God, Judith whispered when I finished. Do you really believe she's planning to run? I don't know what to believe anymore. I rubbed my temples, feeling the beginning of a headache. Sometimes she seems genuinely remorseful. Other times, I catch glimpses of something calculating, something cold. What does your heart tell you? I looked up at my sister, at the kindness in her eyes. My heart has been wrong about Eleanor for years. I can't trust it anymore. Judith sat beside me, taking my hand. Then trust the evidence. Trust what you know, not what you hope. After she left, I tried to eat some of the casserole, but had no appetite. I was about to go to bed when my phone rang. Detective Mercer. We've hit a complication, he said without preamble. Blackwell isn't talking. We need something more concrete to pressure him with. What kind of something? Evidence of direct communication between him and Eleanor about the fraudulent activities. Emails, texts, recorded conversations, anything that explicitly connects them. I thought of Eleanor's careful phone habits, her separate business lines, her insistence on in-person meetings for sensitive matters. I don't have access to any of that. No, Mercer agreed. But you have something potentially more valuable. Her trust. I understood immediately. You want me to wear a wire. We need you to get her talking about Blackwell, about their arrangement, their plans. She'd never discuss that with me. She might if she believes you're on her side. Mercer's voice softened. Mrs. Wilson, I wouldn't ask this if there were any other option. But without stronger evidence, Blackwell will walk, and Eleanor will have time to disappear with the money. After hanging up, I paced my living room, weighing impossible choices. To actively deceive my daughter, to record her without her knowledge, it felt like the ultimate betrayal. And yet, if she was planning to flee with millions in stolen money, leaving her victims without recourse, wasn't my loyalty misplaced? I slept fitfully, haunted by dreams of Eleanor as a child, reaching for me with trusting eyes, only to transform into the calculating woman she had become. By morning, I had made my decision. Detective Mercer arrived at 9, accompanied by a female technician who fitted me with a small recording device concealed beneath my blouse. They tested the equipment, instructed me on what questions to ask, and reminded me not to reveal I was recording. Try to get her talking about Blackwell directly, Mercer advised. Ask about their business relationship, their future plans. If she mentions leaving town or transferring funds, follow up on that. And, if she suspects something, end the conversation naturally and leave. Your safety is the priority. An hour later, I was driving to Eleanor's temporary apartment, a luxury rental she'd taken after listing the mansion. My hands shook slightly on the steering wheel, and I could feel the unfamiliar weight of the recording device against my ribs. Eleanor answered the door in casual clothes, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, a softer look than her usual business attire. Mom? I wasn't expecting you. I was in the neighborhood, I said, the prepared line feeling wooden on my tongue. I thought we could talk more about those Sunday dinners. She smiled, gesturing me inside. Of course. Would you like some coffee? The apartment was sparsely furnished but expensive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. As Eleanor busied herself with the coffee maker, I noticed several packed boxes in the corner of the living room. Are you moving again? I asked, trying to sound merely curious. Just organizing some things, she said vaguely. The mansion sale is moving quickly. I may need to be out sooner than expected. I accepted the coffee she offered, taking a seat on the pristine white sofa. That's good news, I suppose. For the repayment plan. Yes, exactly. Eleanor sat across from me, Her posture relaxed, but her eyes watchful. Mom, is everything okay? You seem tense. I forced a smile. Just tired. I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. My heart raced. Was she about to confess something? Reveal her plans? What is it? Eleanor leaned forward. I've been thinking about making a fresh start. Not just professionally, but personally. Geographically. You want to move? I kept my voice steady, though my pulse quickened. I'm considering it. After the mansion sells and I've made the initial repayments, I might relocate. Start over somewhere new. She watched my reaction carefully. What do you think? Where would you go? I'm not sure yet. Europe. Maybe. Or South America. She smiled slightly. Somewhere I can rebuild without the shadow of my mistakes following me. I thought of the offshore account numbers in the documents Richard had shown me. That's a big decision. Would you continue the repayment plan from abroad? Of course, she said quickly. I've made commitments I intend to honor. I nodded, trying to formulate my next question carefully. What about your cooperation with Detective Mercer? With the investigation? That's nearly complete, Eleanor said, her tone dismissive. I've provided all the information they need. Even about Thomas Blackwell? Eleanor went very still. What about Tom? I was just wondering if he's part of your future plans. You seemed uncomfortable when I mentioned him yesterday. She set down her cup with deliberate care. Why are you so interested in Tom Blackwell, Mom? I'm interested in understanding the full picture of what you've been involved in, I said, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure she could hear it. If I'm going to support your fresh start, I want to know it's truly a break from the past. Eleanor stood abruptly. I need to make a call. Excuse me for a moment. She disappeared into the bedroom, closing the door firmly behind her. I sat frozen, unsure whether to try to overhear her conversation or to maintain my position. After a few minutes, she returned, her expression carefully neutral. Sorry about that. Where were we? We were discussing Thomas Blackwell, I prompted. Right. Eleanor resumed her seat. Tom is a business associate, nothing more. Our partnership for the retirement seminar was going to be our first major collaboration, but as you know, I canceled that. So you don't have other ventures together, past or planned? Eleanor's eyes narrowed slightly. Why the interrogation, Mom? This doesn't sound like casual interest. I felt a chill of apprehension. Had I pushed too hard? I'm trying to understand the scope of what you're leaving behind if you move abroad. The commitments you've made, the relationships you're ending. Tom Blackwell is not a significant part of my life, Eleanor said firmly, and I'd rather not discuss him further. I nodded, deciding to change tactics. Tell me more about your relocation plans. When would you go? Soon. Within the month, ideally. Eleanor's posture relaxed slightly with the change of subject. I've been researching possibilities. That seems very quick. What about your legal obligations here? The cooperation agreement with the authorities? As I said, that's nearly complete. A slight edge entered her voice. Mom, what's really going on? These questions feel pointed. I realized I was losing control of the conversation. I'm just concerned, Eleanor. This sudden decision to leave the country, it feels like you're running away rather than truly facing consequences. I've faced plenty of consequences, she snapped. I've lost my reputation, my company, my home. I'm making restitution. What more do you want from me? The truth, I said simply. About everything. Eleanor stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she rose and walked to the window, her back to me. The truth? She repeated softly. Are you sure that's what you want, Mom? The complete, unvarnished truth? Yes. She turned to face me, and I was startled by the coldness in her eyes. The truth is that I've been playing you. All of you. The repayment plan, the cooperation with the investigation, the remorsates, all part of buying time while I secure my real assets. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? Did you really think I'd give up everything I've built? That I'd spend the next decade making minimum payments to people who were stupid enough to invest without proper due diligence? She laughed, a harsh sound I'd never heard from her before. I'm smarter than that. I always have been. The offshore accounts, I whispered. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. What did you say? The offshore accounts where you've been transferring funds, the $850,000 last week. She moved toward me slowly. How do you know about that? I realized my mistake too late. Richard showed me the documents, the transfers, the connection to Blackwell. Richard Thornton? Eleanor's voice was dangerously quiet. You've been investigating me? Behind my back? Eleanor. Stand up, she commanded. What? Stand up. Now. I rose shakily to my feet. Eleanor approached me, her eyes never leaving mine. Without warning, her hands went to my blouse, pulling it away from my body. The recording device, taped to my ribs, was revealed. You're wearing a wire. Her voice was flat, emotionless. My own mother. Eleanor, please. Who else is listening? Detective Mercer? The whole Financial Crimes Division? She stepped back, her face a mask of contempt. I never thought you'd betray me like this. I never thought you'd steal from me, I countered, finding my voice. I never thought you'd defraud innocent people and feel no remorse. I never thought you'd be planning to run away rather than face the consequences of your actions. Eleanor's laugh was bitter. Consequences. You've been talking about consequences since this began. But you know what? There won't be any consequences. Not for me. What does that mean? Extradition treaties, with more than enough money to live very comfortably for the rest of my life. I stared at the envelope, at the airline logo visible on the ticket inside. You can't run from this, Eleanor. Watch me. Her smile was cold, triumphant. You should leave now, Mom. Go tell Detective Mercer he's lost. Tell all those sad women in Sophia's little group that they're never getting their money back. Tell yourself whatever you need to about having done the right thing. That my daughter is a thief and a liar who cares for no one but herself. Goodbye, Mom. Eleanor opened the apartment door. Don't bother trying to contact me again. As I walked past her, I paused. Your father would be ashamed of what you've become. Something flickered in her eye span, perhaps, or anger, but it was gone in an instant. My father has been dead for 20 years. His opinion doesn't matter anymore. The door closed behind me with finality. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, trembling. I had failed. Instead of gathering evidence, I had revealed the investigation and given Eleanor warning. She would be gone by nightfall, taking millions in stolen money with her. With shaking hands, I removed the recording device and called Detective Mercer. She knows, I said when he answered. She found the wire, and she's leaving the country tonight. Detective Mercer's response was immediate and decisive. Stay where you are. I'm sending officers to your location now. I remained in the hallway outside Eleanor's apartment, my back against the wall, listening for any sounds of movement from within. Minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and 2 uniformed officers approached, followed by Mercer himself. Is she still inside? He asked quietly. I think so. I haven't heard her leave. Mercer nodded to the officers, who positioned themselves on either side of Eleanor's door. He turned to me. Despite what happened with the wire, we got enough. She admitted to defrauding investors and planning to flee the country. That's probable cause for arrest. Will it be enough to convict her? Combined with Blackwell's testimony and the financial records, yes. Mercer's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Wilson, I know this is difficult. If you'd prefer not to be present for the arrest. I'm staying, I said firmly. I need to see this through. Mercer knocked on the door. Eleanor Wilson? This is Detective Mercer, Financial Crimes Division. We have a warrant for your arrest. Please open the door. Silence. He knocked again, louder. Miss Wilson, open the door now. When there was still no response, Mercer nodded to one of the officers, who used a small battering ram to force the door open. They entered with weapons drawn, Mercer following close behind. I waited in the hallway, my heart pounding. Moments later, Mercer emerged. She's gone. The balcony door is open. She must have left right after you. The flight, I said, remembering the ticket I'd seen. She had a ticket for tonight. To where? I couldn't see the destination, just the airline logo. Mercer was already on his phone, issuing orders to place Eleanor on no-fly lists and alert airport security. I stood in the doorway of the apartment, surveying the space where my daughter had revealed her true nature just minutes before. The coffee cups still sat on the table. The boxes in the corner were open now, their contents apparently removed in haste. We'll find her, Mercer assured me, ending his call. Every airport, train station, and bus terminal in the state is being watched. Her passport has been flagged. She won't get far. But as the hours passed, that confidence began to waver. Eleanor seemed to have vanished. Her credit cards showed no activity. Her known vehicles were found abandoned in various parking lots around the city. The airline confirmed she had not checked in for any flights. By nightfall, I was back in my own home, exhausted and heartsick. Judith had come over, bringing food I couldn't eat and comfort I couldn't accept. Detective Mercer called with updates that revealed nothing new. Eleanor had escaped just as she had planned, just as she had boasted she would. I keep thinking about what I could have done differently, I admitted. If I hadn't reacted to her mentioning the offshore accounts, if I'd been more careful. This isn't your fault, Margaret. Eleanor made her choices long before today. I nodded, knowing she was right but unable to shake the feeling of failure. After Judith left, I tried to sleep, but found myself standing at my kitchen window instead, staring up at the darkened mansion on the hill. The for sale sign gleamed faintly in the moonlight, a final piece of Eleanor's elaborate deception. My phone rang just after midnight. Detective Mercer's number. We found her car, he said without preamble. At a private airfield outside the city. A charter flight left for the Cayman Islands 3 hours ago. We're working with international authorities, but she's gone. I finished for him. For now, he said. But we both knew the truth. The Cayman Islands were just the first stop. From there, Eleanor could go anywhere changing identities, using her hidden funds to stay beyond the reach of justice. I'm sorry, Mrs. Wilson. We'll keep looking, but you should prepare yourself for the possibility that she won't be found. After hanging up, I sat in my darkened living room, a strange calm settling over me. Eleanor had won. She had taken everything, my savings, my trust, my hope for reconciliation, and escaped without consequences. The elegant house on the hill would be sold, the proceeds divided among creditors. Sophia and the other women would receive pennies on the dollar, if anything. And I would be left with nothing but the knowledge that I had raised a daughter capable of such calculated cruelty. The next morning dawned bright and clear, mocking my dark mood. I moved through my morning routine mechanically, making coffee I didn't drink, toast I couldn't eat. The local news reported Eleanor's disappearance in neutral terms. Local businesswoman Eleanor Wilson, under investigation for financial irregularities, has reportedly left the country. No mention of the millions stolen, the lives destroyed. At 10 o'clock, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Richard Thornton standing there, a thick folder under his arm, and a grim satisfaction in his eyes. She didn't get away with it, he said as I let him in. What do you mean? Detective Mercer said she fled to the Cayman Islands. She did. Richard set his folder on my coffee table. But she can't access her money. I stared at him, uncomprehending. Why not? Because I froze it. Richard opened the folder, revealing legal documents bearing official seals. The moment you told me she had found the wire, I filed emergency injunctions against every account we had identified. Offshore or not, those funds are now locked in legal limbo. Hope flickered faintly. For how long? Years, potentially, and that's just the beginning. Richard spread more documents before me. These are the results of our investigation into Thomas Blackwell. He's agreed to a plea deal in exchange for his testimony against Eleanor and the others involved in the scheme. I sank onto the sofa, trying to absorb this unexpected development. So, even though Eleanor escaped, she's a fugitive with no access to her stolen funds, facing federal charges that carry a minimum 20-year sentence. Richard's smile was grim. She didn't win, Margaret. She just doesn't know it yet. Over the next few days, the full extent of Richard's actions became clear. Working with Detective Mercer and federal prosecutors, he had orchestrated a financial vice that was slowly closing around Eleanor, even as she believed herself safely beyond reach. The offshore accounts were frozen. The mansion sale was halted by court order. Eleanor's remaining legitimate assets were seized to establish a victim restitution fund. Sophia called with the news that all members of their group had received formal letters from the prosecutor's office, outlining the steps being taken to recover their investments. It wasn't complete justice. The emotional damage could never be fully repaired, but it was more than they had dared hope for. "We have you to thank for this," Sophia said. "Without your courage, Eleanor would have disappeared with everything." "I didn't stop her from fleeing," I pointed out. "But you stopped her from winning. That matters more." A week after Eleanor's escape, Detective Mercer arrived at my door with a young woman I didn't recognize. She was perhaps 30, professionally dressed, with kind eyes and a serious demeanor. "Mrs. Wilson, this is Special Agent Caroline Hayes from Interpol," Mercer introduced her. "She's coordinating the international effort to locate your daughter." Agent Hayes shook my hand. "May we come in? There have been developments I'd like to discuss with you." In my living room, Agent Hayes opened her laptop and showed me surveillance photos taken at various airports and border crossings. "We believe Eleanor traveled from the Cayman Islands to Mexico, then attempted to enter Venezuela using a false passport. Venezuelan authorities detained her when the passport triggered an alert." My breath caught. "You found her? She's in custody?" "Not exactly." Agent Hayes's expression was carefully neutral. "She was briefly detained but released before our agents could arrive. However, we now have confirmation of her location and her current alias. More importantly, we've documented her attempt to use fraudulent identification, which gives us additional leverage with local authorities." "What does that mean in practical terms?" I asked. "It means we're closing in," Mercer said. "Eleanor's options are narrowing. The financial restrictions Richard put in place mean she's operating with limited cash. She can't access her hidden accounts. She can't establish new identities without money. It's only a matter of time." "How much time?" Agent Hayes and Mercer exchanged glances. "That's difficult to predict," she admitted. "But we have resources your daughter doesn't. And we're very good at what we do." After they left, I stood at my kitchen window, looking up at Eleanor's mansion. A new sign had appeared beside the "For Sale" notice, "Property subject to legal proceedings." The symbol of her success was now a monument to her downfall. The weeks that followed settled into a strange rhythm. I returned to volunteer work at the local library, finding comfort in the routine and in being useful to others. Judith visited regularly, bringing news and companionship. Richard called with updates on the legal proceedings, assets being liquidated, claims being processed, the machinery of justice grinding slowly but inexorably forward. Detective Mercer or Agent Hayes would contact me whenever there was news of Eleanor, a possible sighting in Colombia, a transaction traced to Ecuador, rumors of a woman matching her description in Peru. The net was tightening, but Eleanor remained just beyond reach, a shadow slipping between countries with porous borders and officials susceptible to bribes. 3 months after Eleanor's flight, I received an unexpected visitor. Maria Vasquez, the widow from Sophia's group, stood on my porch holding a small potted plant. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said hesitantly. "Sophia gave me your address. I wanted to thank you in person." I invited her in, touched by the gesture. Maria placed the plant, a peace lily, on my coffee table. "It's not much, but I wanted you to have something living. Something that will grow." Her eyes were warm with understanding. "What you did, standing against your own daughter, I know how difficult that must have been." Some days I still wonder if I did the right thing, I admitted. You did, Maria said firmly. My husband worked 40 years at the same company. The money Eleanor took was his life's work, his legacy to me and our children. Thanks to you, we've received the first repayment. It's not everything, but it's something. It's hope. After Maria left, I placed the peace lily on my kitchen windowsill where it would catch the morning sun. Its white flowers seemed to glow against the green leaves, a symbol of renewal I hadn't known I needed. That night, I dreamed of Eleanor as a child, her small hand in mine as we walked through a park. In the dream, she looked up at me with clear, innocent eyes and asked, "Are you proud of me, Mommy?" I woke with tears on my face, mourning not just the daughter I had lost, but the woman she might have become in a different story. 6 months passed. The legal proceedings continued. Eleanor remained at large, though the sightings had shifted to Argentina, suggesting she was moving further south. The mansion finally sold at auction, the proceeds divided among her victims according to a court-approved formula. Sophia's group received their second repayment installments. I was gardening on a warm spring afternoon when a black SUV pulled up in front of my house. Agent Hayes emerged, accompanied by a man in a dark suit I didn't recognize. My heart stuttered. Had they found Eleanor? Was she in custody? Or worse? Agent Hayes's expression gave nothing away as she approached. "Mrs. Wilson, may we speak with you privately?" Inside, she introduced her companion as Deputy Director Larson of the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. He remained standing, while Agent Hayes sat across from me at my kitchen table. "Mrs. Wilson, we've located your daughter," she said without preamble. "Where?" "A small coastal town in southern Chile. She's been living there under the name Elena Winters for approximately 2 months. I gripped the edge of the table. "Have you arrested her?" "Not yet." Deputy Director Larson spoke for the first time. "The situation is complicated. Chile has an extradition treaty with the United States, but the process can be lengthy, especially if the subject has resources to fight it." "But Eleanor's assets are frozen," I pointed out. "She doesn't have resources." Agent Hayes and Larson exchanged glances. "We believe she may have had one account we didn't identify," Hayes said carefully. "Not large by her previous standards, but enough to establish herself and potentially hire local representation to fight extradition." "So she's still free," I said flatly. "Still beyond justice." "A more direct approach." "I don't understand." "We believe Eleanor might voluntarily return to the United States under certain circumstances," Hayes explained. "Specifically, if she believed it was in her best interest to do so." "Why would she think that?" "She's facing decades in prison here." Larson cleared his throat. "People in Eleanor's position often reach a point where they're tired of running. The constant vigilance, the false identities, the isolation, it wears them down. If presented with the right incentive, many choose a negotiated surrender over a lifetime as a fugitive." "What kind of incentive?" "A modified plea agreement, reduced charges in exchange for full cooperation, including the recovery of any remaining hidden assets." I shook my head, anger rising. "After everything she's done? After all the people she's hurt? You want to offer her a deal?" "Not a generous one," Hayes assured me. "She would still serve significant time, but it might be enough to bring her in voluntarily, avoiding a prolonged international manhunt and extradition battle." "What does this have to do with me?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Eleanor has cut ties with everyone in her former life," Larson said. "Everyone except you. Despite everything, you're her mother. If anyone can convince her to return and face justice, it's you." The request hung in the air between us. They wanted me to contact Eleanor, to persuade her to surrender, to once again insert myself into the tangled relationship between my daughter and the consequences of her actions. "You want me to trick her," I said finally. "To lure her back under false pretenses. That continuing to run will only delay the inevitable. That facing justice now, on somewhat favorable terms, is better than being captured later, with no leverage at all." And if I refuse? Then we continue as we have been, Larson said. But I won't pretend that doesn't mean months or years of additional delay, with no guarantee of success. I looked out my kitchen window at the peace lily on the sill, its white flowers bright against the glass. I need time to think about this. They left me with a secure phone and instructions on how to contact them when I made my decision. I spent the evening walking through my garden, weighing impossible choices yet again. To help bring Eleanor to justice meant reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal. To refuse meant knowing I had allowed her to remain free when I might have helped end her flight. In the morning, I called Judith and asked her to come over. I needed the perspective of someone who loved me but wasn't entangled in the investigation. "They're using you," she said bluntly after I explained the situation. "They've failed to capture her through conventional means, so now they're exploiting your relationship. But if it works, if it brings her back to face consequences?" Judith sighed. "Then you'll have done the right thing. Again. At great personal cost. Again." She took my hands in hers. "The question is, can you bear it? Can you reach out to Eleanor, knowing what she's done, knowing she betrayed you, and offer her this lifeline?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants her to pay the full price for her crimes. Part of me still sees the little girl who needed me to bandage her knees and chase away nightmares." "Whatever you decide," Judith said, "I'm here. You're not alone in this." That night, I made my decision. I called Agent Hayes on the secure phone and told her I would help. The next day, she arrived with a team of technical specialists who established a secure communication channel that couldn't be traced back to my location. "We've drafted a message," Hayes said, showing me a tablet with carefully worded text. "But we'd like you to personalize it, make it authentically yours. Eleanor will be suspicious of any contact, but she's more likely to respond to something that sounds genuinely like her mother." I read their clinical, formal message and shook my head. This isn't how I would speak to her. "Then write your own," Hayes suggested. "Just be sure to include the key points about the plea offer and the time limitation." I sat at my kitchen table and composed a new message, speaking from my heart while maintaining the necessary boundaries. This is not forgiveness or reconciliation. It's practical information that might spare you years of additional imprisonment. The offer expires in 72 hours. If you want details, respond to this message. If not, we have nothing more to say to each other, Mom. Agent Hayes read it and nodded. Direct and authentic. It might work. The message was sent through channels I didn't fully understand, routed to an email address the investigators had identified as potentially belonging to Eleanor. Then we waited. 24 hours passed with no response. I tried to go about my normal routine, but found myself checking the secure phone obsessively. Agent Hayes called twice, with updates that revealed nothing new. 48 hours. Still no word. I began to believe Eleanor had ignored the message, or never received it. Perhaps she had already moved on from Chile, vanishing once again into the shadowy world of false identities and cash transactions. 60 hours. I was in my garden, deadheading roses, when the secure phone buzzed. A text message. "Proof this is really you?" My hands trembled as I typed. "On your 7th birthday, you fell off the new bicycle your father gave you and broke your arm. In the hospital, you made us promise not to tell anyone you were crying because you were worried about the bicycle, not your arm." 3 minutes later, the phone buzzed again. "What kind of deal?" I called Agent Hayes immediately. She arrived within the hour, bringing the prosecutor who would outline the specific terms of the plea agreement. They composed a detailed message, which I reviewed before it was sent. The response came more quickly this time. "How do I know this isn't a trap?" The negotiations continued through the night and into the next day. Eleanor was suspicious, demanding guarantees the prosecutors couldn't provide. The 72-hour deadline approached, then passed, but the conversation continued. Eleanor was engaging, which meant she was considering the offer. On the 4th day, a final message arrived. "Airport. Tomorrow. Noon. Come alone or no deal." Agent Hayes was adamant. "Absolutely not. We can't allow you to meet her without protection. She won't come if she sees law enforcement, I argued. You know that. It's too dangerous. She's desperate, cornered. We have no idea what she might do. In the end, we compromised. I would go to the small regional airport Eleanor had specified. I would appear to be alone. But federal agents would be stationed throughout the terminal, ready to move at the first sign of trouble. The next morning dawned clear and cool. I dressed carefully in clothes Eleanor would recognize: the blue sweater she had given me years ago, the silver earrings that had been her father's last gift to me. Agent Hayes drove me to the airport, repeating the safety protocols until I assured her I understood. Remember, your only job is to keep her talking until we can move into position, she said as we pulled into the parking lot. Don't try to apprehend her yourself. Don't get between her and our agents. I understand. And Margaret? Hayes's expression softened. Whatever happens today, you've done more than anyone could ask of a mother. Remember that. I entered the small terminal alone, scanning the sparse crowd for any sign of Eleanor. The departure board showed only 3 flights scheduled for the next few hours. A family with young children waited near the check-in counter. An elderly couple sat reading newspapers. A businessman talked loudly on his phone. No, Eleanor. I found a seat with a clear view of the main entrance and settled in to wait. Noon came and went. 1 o'clock. 2. The family boarded their flight. The elderly couple departed. Still no sign of Eleanor. She changed her mind, I said, a strange mixture of disappointment and relief washing over me. Or she was testing us, seeing if we'd really send you alone. Hayes sighed. I'm sorry, Margaret. We'll keep trying. As we walked toward the exit, my phone-me regular phone, not the secure one, buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Turn around. I stopped, my heart racing, and slowly turned back toward the terminal. There, emerging from the women's restroom, was Eleanor. Her hair was different, shorter, darker, and she wore glasses I'd never seen before. But it was unmistakably my daughter. Our eyes met across the terminal. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Eleanor walked slowly toward me, her expression unreadable. I was acutely aware of the federal agents positioned around us, of Hayes tensing beside me, ready to signal for Eleanor's arrest. You came, Eleanor said when she reached me. Her voice was the same, though her appearance had changed. I said I would. Alone? Her eyes flicked to Hayes, then back to me. As alone as you are, I replied, knowing she would understand the implication. A faint smile touched Eleanor's lips. Well played, Mom. She glanced around the terminal, undoubtedly identifying the agents watching us. I assume the deal is still on the table? It is. Eleanor nodded slowly. Then I surrender. She held out her wrists toward Hayes. I believe this is the part where you arrest me. As Hayes recited the Miranda rights and placed handcuffs on my daughter, Eleanor looked at me one last time. For what it's worth, Mom, I am sorry. Not for what I did, exactly, but for doing it to you. It wasn't true remorse. It wasn't redemption. But as I watched the agents lead Eleanor away, I realized it was enough for me to finally close this chapter and begin to heal. My daughter would face justice. Her victims would receive restitution. And I would return to my small house and my garden, to the peace lily on my windowsill and the knowledge that I had done what was right, no matter the cost. In the quiet aftermath, standing alone in the terminal as Eleanor disappeared into a secure area, I felt not triumph or vindication, but a profound sense of closure. The nightmare that had begun with a foreclosure notice had finally ended with justice, imperfect, painful justice, but justice nonetheless. Outside, the spring sun warmed my face as I walked to Agent Hayes's waiting car. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, depositions, perhaps testimony, the public spectacle of Eleanor's prosecution. But today, in this moment, I had done all that could be asked of me. I had stood firm. I had chosen truth over loyalty, justice over blood. And in doing so, I had finally, fully reclaimed myself.